Hello and welcome to another one of my thoughts videos. Sometimes I get really excited about some sort of topic and I really want to share it with you, but then there's a whole bunch of distractions and this and that happens, and then I don't get around to it, and then I come up with another exciting thing and that oversteps another end, and I just don't get around to it. So here we are. I'm just trying to sort out a number of topics and which ones that I want to attack, and they sometimes even interlink, and then trying to figure out while I'm being busy how I can sort that out and share it. So that's basically one of the topics I wanted to share, was study everything that it comes to mind. Be curious about everything, because sometimes those one thing that seems unrelated to another is actually related to something else, and that's where a lot of the scientists these days go wrong, because they're concentrating on one little area of their own study, because that's what they're limited to, and they can't make other connections with other very important things which are outside of their field of study. So study everything. So in this one, I just want to cover a little bit of an update. Remember, end of last year, I had a big rash and I learned a whole bunch of stuff. I started getting magnetic dust from my feet, which has slowly but surely dropped off as the veins on my legs, particularly in feet, clear up and are going nice and clear. And I'm still detoxing with a whole bunch of things, but it is improving vastly, and I'm impressed, and I'm finding all sorts of things. Now, as part of that study, I came across the spots that I was having. They all basically disappeared with the rash, and then I got a bunch of new ones and some that returned that disappeared. And it seems to me that freckles or spots and lumps and moles and all those sorts of things, they seem to me like they shouldn't be there, and that they are indicating something. And so I started doing a little bit of research, because I've had 3 melanoma cancers, which is skin cancer, and so I'm sort of interested in what happens with the skin and what happens there. And then I looked at these spots and said, well, what are they actually, and what are melanomas? Melanomas have a lot of dark melanin. That the melanin is the brown colouring that makes the freckle a freckle, and when they go dark, and then the cells that are in the melanomas are a little bit weird. They have multiple nuclei, and they're not circular round, because they're about twice the size of normal cells. Now, to me that seems strange, and I'm investigating that. I think I'll leave that topic for another day, but that's one area that has provoked some investigation. Now, those freckles that were on my body it seems that they aren't necessarily permanent, it seems to me. They can come, they can go. And so I started to investigate more. Now, I thought, what's the element that is in those freckles? The brown color is melanin. Now, it turns out that that's extremely interesting, because they've been studying this since the 90s, that means the end of last century, for 20-something or other years now, almost 30. And they have found that this brown colouring is very prevalent. You find it in your spots, in your hair colour, and in the retina of your eyes. Now, the fact that it's in the retina of your eyes made them think to themselves, well, something is interesting here. It's not just brown colour, it's doing something related to your vision and to other processes maybe. So they started to investigate it, and they managed to synthesize, that means artificially make melanin, and now they have found that the melanin has various different electrical properties, very much like photosynthesis as the main one. It's an absorber of heavy metals, and can possibly have something to do with how birds orient and fly, and know where north and south is and stuff like that. That has great implications as well. I often wondered how the indigenous people on the plains of the Amazon plains managed to know where to find their way around when there's no horizontal indicators, and even in the pitch dark of night they know where north and south is, and they can find their way across the flat plains with no landmarks to go by because they can sense north and south. That may have something to do with the melanin that turns a person into a little bit of a compass, as it were, discerning north and south, because the melanin can align with those metals and this and that. It's very interesting to study. But let's get back to the main one, is that the melanin has a photovoltaic properties, which means that it can change or make electricity, and they are using this artificial melanin for investigating the next generation of solar panels. Now this has major sort of implications, because it means that our bodies, our spots, our skin, our hair and our eyeballs are photosynthesizing. It's exactly the same process as chlorophyll in plants. We've talked about that in another video of how photosynthesis works. We're very privileged to have this information that 80 years or more, 100 years ago, they never knew about this, how photosynthesis works, and now they're finding that we actually photosynthesize as well. There are at least 3 different alternative energies that our body are able to absorb from the ambience, which does not come from our food. And some of those topics that has got me excited and tripping over myself as to which one to talk about first, and we'll get to those later on. But let's concentrate on melanin, because that's the one that has been interesting due to this rash that I had. Now it turns out that the melanin in our skin photosynthesizes by taking from ultraviolet rays through the spectrum of visible light into the infrared, and mostly in the infrared spectrum. The melanin, the photons that come in that light hit a water molecule and hit an electron, and boom, hit it into the space between the hydrogens and the oxygen of a water molecule, freeing off a hydrogen and making it an ion. In other words, it has one electron already, and then it has another one that is forced into the extra space that hydrogen has. It's unstable, but now it has 2 electrons rather than 1, and then that extra electron can be used in other processes and captured. That's exactly what chlorophyll does in the plant. Photon comes in, hits an electron into the hydrogen space and ionizes it. It breaks off the oxygen, and the oxygen stays there with another one, and then it does it to the other one, and those hydrogens are used. The oxygen is then thrown out into the atmosphere, and those hydrogens are used in other processes and then turned into sugars, into glucose, fructose, as part of the saving process of that. Now that hydrogen in our body also happens in the melanin. The melanin is absorbing the photons, breaking off hydrogens from water, and those hydrogen ions are used in different processes in our body. Now that happens in our hair because it's 20% water in our hair, so they're photosynthesizing, our hair is, and our eyeballs are creating energy or capturing energy as we receive light through our eyeballs to the retina and using that to send messages to the brain. So the energy that we are sending to the brain in our sight comes from energy that is captured from the very same sunlight or light that we're seeing. Now the interesting thing is that it's very effective in the infrared spectrum, which means that it penetrates through at least 30 centimeters, about that much, so it through our body, and therefore can get as far as our intestines. And some of the nutritionists are saying that the bacteria that we need in our stomach also photosynthesize with the infrared spectrum that goes through our body and into our gut, so that we are feeding our gut bacteria, some of them, with infrared light, and therefore energy from the ambience. And so that's an interesting one, that the bacteria, some of them are photosynthesizing with this light that penetrates our body and into our gut, as well as the light that's going in our eyes and the melanin that's in our skin. Now, in the melanin that's in the spots, the freckles, it made me think, well, why is it grouping together? It should be very even over our body and not in spots. Now, it indicates to me that there is a problem in the tissues below, in the muscle tissue, the tendons and veins and the whole system below that, and it's needing extra hydrogen ions to do what it needs to do because it's not in its proper balanced state. So I think spots like freckles are indicators of the need for detoxification, or in particular, or that there's something not running properly under the skin and of those areas. Now, interestingly, the hair, since Christmas, basically, that's now we're January, about 3 months, I noticed that not only are the spots appeared, the bigger ones got smaller into smaller ones, and the more I detoxed, they got smaller and smaller, faded, and some of them just fade and disappear, and they rub off, they disappear entirely. But I noticed that those spots were replaced by a more even colouring of my skin, even though I'm pretty white anyway. And an interesting thing is that I started growing hair back on my legs, feet, the tops of my toes. My arms are a lot hairier than they were, and on the tops of my fingers even. I've become a bit hairier, not just because of the beard, but I mean body hair. Now that isn't, I haven't had those hairs. I've been basically bald on my legs and minimal on my arms for at least 20 years. And so by this detoxification process that I'm going through at the moment, and the spots that have come and now they're all going, they're being replaced with hair, which means that our hair, if you remember in the Bible, Samson grew long hair, and that was the reason of his strength, he said, as a something rather, he had long hair, and when Delilah cut his hair off, he lost his strength. Well, it appears that he was actually sort of right, that our hair are acting like antennas, that with the infrared and visible light is converting the water that's in it into hydrogen ions that then can transport those electrons to different parts of the body to contribute the energy to supplement what we're intaking in our food. Now, I have been thinking that it is possible the food we eat excites a primary type of coil magnetic field in our body through the Krebs cycle and those processes of respiration, and that aids the absorption of energy from the ambience. Well, it seems that there are 3 different ways that we can absorb energy from the ambience. One of them is our hair, the melanin that we have, and one is our bones, and the other is the 4th state of water. Now, that's a really interesting topic that I will reserve for another video. So this is a quick update of melanin. We actually photosynthesize with the brown colouring in our skin, hair, eyeballs, and wherever it is in the rest of our body, in our brain and places like that. So, wow, we photosynthesize, but with brown pigment, not green. And we have a lot more in common with plants than we thought. Let's expand on this later, but that was an interesting finding due to this rash I had last year. Aren't I lucky?